Okay, I'm going to apologize in advance to the guy right on the camera, because when I was a kid, my mom said I couldn't sit still, and that hasn't changed at all. I do have a cheese blog, and I'm going to tell you what it is. It's omgthat'safinecheeseplate.com. So there's my plug for my blog. I love cheese plates, and I take pictures of them, and I put them on the internet. It's this thing that I do. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to tell you where I'm from, but before I tell you where I'm from, I want to tell you a little bit about my wife. My wife is from Jersey. Is anybody here from Jersey? Anybody? Jersey? Yay, Jersey. Okay, so she loves the beach. She has this like spiritual connection with the ocean. She could spend all day sitting on the ocean and spending all her time on the beach. She just absolutely loves it. So this is where I'm from. And you can see how well that works out for somebody who loves the beach. I am literally, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I'm literally 100 miles from the geographic center of North America. It's Rugby, South Dakota. If you balance North America on a pin, that would be the geographic center. I'm 100 miles from there. South Dakota does have a great landmark, a famous landmark. Anybody know what it is? Mount Rushmore, that's right, is the famous landmark. My son graduated from high school in May, and we had relatives come out from Jersey, and we had to take them over to Mount Rushmore. And my daughter is 12, and she was super excited to go see Mount Rushmore. And I was like, well, this is great. This is you know, some American history. This would be very exciting. She wanted to go see this. Nope, all she wanted was a picture of her picking George Washington's nose. So this was one of my proudest moments as a parent. That is my daughter picking Washington's nose. It's a great, great moment there. I am from a company called Blend Interactive. We are a content management consultancy. We're 18 people. We specialize in content management. We don't really integrate on one particular platform. We integrate with a number of them there. We work across both LAMP and .NET stacks. For me, myself, I was a LAMP developer. I was an open source developer for a number of different years. And then I became a .NET developer. And I've integrated and sold commercial content management for about a decade now. So I spent a lot of time selling content management systems. Interestingly, I was a Movable Type user for about 10 years. I spent an enormous amount of time in Movable Type. I absolutely love Movable Type, and so I'm actually really, really excited that Movable Type 6 is out, and it's a thing. This is great. What I'm going to talk about today, well, before I go to that, there are going to be some really dangerous generalizations here. I'm going to make some generalizations about developers and about marketing people, and I apologize in advance for that. I understand there are exceptions. I was a developer, so I feel like it's safe for me to generalize about developers. But what I'm going to talk about today is that the role of content management has fundamentally changed. And we have to start developing it differently, and we have to start selling it differently. And I remember what Robert said. He said that this presentation was going to be entertaining, funny, and rousing. So I'm going to try to hit all three. Also, apparently, I have to completely contradict Karen later today. Now, Karen is a sweetheart, and I know Karen, and she's adorable, and you're going to love her presentation. And I hope she gets the last word, which is really unfortunate, because she gets to go at 1 o'clock. So I hope she doesn't contradict me too badly. So the 3 points we're going to make here is how content management systems have traditionally been very, very developer-centric. It's been a very, very developer-centered industry. Additionally, that content management has really lost out to content marketing. Management's not really the thing anymore. It's really about content marketing. And finally, you really don't sell management the same way you sell marketing. The way to sell these systems has really fundamentally changed. Okay, so starting about the developer centrism of content management, it's really no secret that developers absolutely love content management systems. If you're a developer, maybe the first thing you ever did on the internet was to build a content management system. In fact, if you Google homegrown CMS, I think it's funny, the first result is from the Daily WTF. And I don't know if anybody knows about the Daily WTF, but it's a website that displays stories about software projects gone horribly wrong. And so I think it's appropriate that that's the first result for homegrown CMS. I'm going to make a series of what I call bold, unverifiable claims. My number one bold, unverifiable claim is that more content management systems get written from scratch than any other genre of software. For some reason, we keep reinventing this wheel over and over and over again. And I put a lot of thought and analysis into this, and I came up with a reason. I came up with a list of 16 or 17 reasons why we keep writing content management systems over and over and over again. And then I looked at my list, and I realized that a lot of them are not content management system centric. A lot of them were based around general software, because the software developers like to reinvent the wheel. So I really narrowed it down to 3 reasons why we like to reinvent content management systems specifically. And I do have a point to this, but I'm going to go through these 3 reasons that we do this. Number one reason we keep reinventing this wheel is that the basic functionality of a CMS is actually very, very simple. If you're a developer, you started building a CMS, this is probably what it looked like. This is, you started designing a database and you thought, well, I'll build my own CMS, this would be great. And every page will have an ID and it'll have a title and it'll have a body and it'll be super simple. And so if you Google building a CMS, you get 86 million results. And you get results like this, PHP for beginners building your first simple CMS. Because it's just accepted that this is what you do. You learn to program and you build a CMS. If you Google simple CMS, you get 106 million results. And this has actually become a marketing paradigm now, this idea of content management simplicity. Building a CMS is simple. This is what we do. The functionality is very, very superficial. I maintain that if you come to me with a content management problem and a competent development or programming framework, I can build you a CMS to solve that problem in about an hour. If you have a brochureware site and you give me a competent programming platform, I'll give you a CMS in an hour. Because the basic functionality of a CMS is not very complicated. And this is great because we love short-term wins. And I have built a number of different CMSs over my career. I haven't built one in a long time for a lot of different reasons. But over my career, I've built a ton of different CMSs. And you get a short-term win out of it. You build this simple system and suddenly you can go on and you can edit a page of content. And isn't this great? And aren't we clever? And you get the short-term win. The business loves short-term wins. And as a developer, this makes you feel really good. So that's number one reason. The second reason is I believe that content is inherently relatable. If you are going to build a piece of software, you need domain knowledge around that problem. So software solves problems. You need domain knowledge around that problem. And content is inherently relatable. We all surf the web. And the web is full of things like menus. We all know how menus work. And there are articles with titles and bylines and dates and bodies and images. There are crumb trails. We all naturally, intuitively know how crumb trails work. There are article indexes. These are things that we use every single day. And so what we do as we surf the web, and I don't know if we realize this, is that we become critics. We're not just users of content management systems, we're critics. We're surfing the web and we're using websites and we're saying, well, I like this, I don't like this website's driving me nuts. If you are a developer, you get to take that one step further. Not only can you sit there and complain about it and say this website's driving me nuts, but you can fix it. You can change it. So everybody in this room is a CMS critic. And if you're a developer, you get to go one step further and actually say, well, I can change this and build a new CMS. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 3 is that developers absolutely love frameworks. Developers love frameworks. They're all over the place. There's a framework for every single programming language, every single platform. We could write frameworks forever. If you go to your programmer and you give him a problem, he is both going to solve that problem for you, but he is also going to solve all the future problems in the world that will ever exist around that. I maintain that developers love to solve problems that don't exist yet. It's our favorite thing to do. And the reason why is because there's no accountability. We can create a straw man problem. We can create a fake problem and solve it and be very impressed with ourselves. So this is what we do as programmers. We solve problems that don't exist because we absolutely love frameworks. And really, what is a CMS? A CMS is a framework for a website. If you define a framework as a thing that helps you stamp something out in the future, that helps you take care of all the minutiae and rote work of a problem and solve the problem at a higher level. And a CMS is really a framework for a website. It solves a lot of the lower level website problems and lets you work at a higher level. And it's a framework and we love frameworks. So this is why we do this. So here's our 3 reasons why we keep reinventing content management systems. It's superficially very simple. It's inherently relatable. And we love frameworks. And these 3 things have combined to make the content management industry extremely developer-centric. Developers love content management systems. The open source content management system world is just absolutely saturated right now. You find me a developer, and I guarantee he's written an open source CMS at one point. But why does this matter? Why do we care about this? And there's a very important reason why this is important. Because developers relate to content as data. If you have a content problem, you're the Huffington Post, and you have a billion different articles that you have to manage, and you come to me and you say, I'd like you to come up with a solution to managing that, I'm going to look at that as data. I mean, those are bytes of character strings, and I just need to manage this in some sort of database. And my friend Fred he came up with a quote that I actually think is really interesting. He once said to me over drinks, a CMS is really just a relational database management system. So what a CMS is, it's another layer of management on top of a database. Databases manage data, and you put another layer of management on top of that, and you have a CMS. And it looks something like this. You have the data core, and then you wrap it in functionality to manage it as content. And so as a developer, I'm saying, well, that makes total sense, and I know how to manage data, and that would be very, very simple to do. And to a developer, content is just a variable to be managed. It's not an asset to be leveraged. The Huffington Post has 100,000 articles or something. That's business value. That's a business asset to them. That helps them make money. As a developer, I don't care how they make money. Those are character arrays is what those are. Databases were born to solve that problem. And so this is the problem with the content management industry right now, is that we have a bunch of developers sitting around saying, let's solve this problem at a data level. Let's not solve this problem as an asset level and solve a business problem and provide ROI to the organization. Let's just manage it as data. The original title of this presentation, I originally gave a presentation much like this at DrupalCon in May, and the original title was going to be Content Management is Dead. And that's kind of hyperbole, but the emphasis there is on the word management. Content management is dead, and I'll explain that in just a second. And dead is a little too strong a word. So content management is dead. Maybe content management is done. Maybe it's done. Maybe we're finished talking about content management now, and that's even too big. And I kind of settle on content management is mature. And then I didn't title the talk that, because then that's a very boring statement. Content management is mature. That's your classic consultant statement. But it is. The content management industry is mature. The management equation of content has really, really been solved. If we look at the life cycle of content, and this is kind of an oversimplification, but we can really divide it into two stages, what I call content management and what I call content delivery. And in the middle is the publish button. So everything to the left side of that publish button is management. This is the content creation and all the things we do before we publish the content. And once we publish the content, we kind of throw it over the wall, and it gets delivered. This is when it actually gets consumed by people. So the left side of the publish button, all the pre-publish features of a CMS are all what we do to content before it actually gets delivered. And these are very, very kind of boring foundational things. Things like content modeling, deciding the fields and the properties that make up your content. Things like content architecture, how we're going to organize content in relation to each other. Content production, how people are going to go in and edit content and create it. And then really boring things like versioning and permissions and workflow, not to mention any of the repository API level stuff. These are all the pre-published features of a CMS. This is management. I love the Rocky movies. I love the training montages in the Rocky movies. I could watch an entire movie of the training montage. You give me a Rocky movie that's just him working out to music, I could watch that. It's fantastic. I would give that movie an Oscar. And this is management. Management is all the stuff we do in preparation for content to provide some value for us. But much like the Rocky movie, eventually content has to do something. So Rocky can't just have a whole movie about a training montage. Eventually Rocky has to get in the ring and fight a guy. And for me, that just kind of ruins the movie. It's like, well, he's fighting this guy. This is boring now. But content delivery is the main event. This is the moment where content does something for our organization. So management is the training montage, and then at some point, content has to get out there, provide some value for the organization. That's after we press the publish button. That is fundamentally content delivery. And so if we go back to this diagram, data was our core, and we kind of wrapped this in management, in content management. At some point, we hit the publish button, and then we go into this outer ring. And what is this outer ring? What is this thing that happens out here? And that's the delivery tier. That's marketing, fundamentally. Once we publish that content, we move from this management paradigm into this marketing paradigm. OK, so we're taking a tour of the movies now. So we'll stop talking about Rocky, and we'll talk about Forrest Gump. As content management vendors, we were always chasing after the customer on the management side. We could never offer them all the features they wanted for content management. They always wanted more and more and more stuff, and we were always running behind them. But at some point, we caught them. We caught them, and we're out in front of them now. And my classic joke here, which you're not a developer won't make sense, but my joke is, how did we catch them? We grew a neck beard. See, there's not enough developers in the room for that joke to really work. But we grew a neckbeard and we caught them. And so now we're out in front of them and they're standing way back there. And on the management side, we don't really know where to go. Well, what do we do now? They're not asking for features that we can't provide in the management side. So what do we do now? So here's bold, unverifiable claim number 2. The current level of CMS management features are good enough for 95% of projects. I run a digital agency. We build websites. We do it on a number of different CMSs, and I can tell you that those CMSs, pretty much at their defaults, are good enough for 95% of our projects on the management side only. If you come to me with a content management problem, I can probably solve it without making any changes to an existing system. Because the fact is, the content management industry, the management side of the equation, that is very, very mature. There's a phenomenon called the WordPress effect. I've also heard it called the Drupal effect. And what this says is that if WordPress does something, you cannot claim that thing as a competitive feature anymore. If WordPress does a thing, then that thing I can't use to sell anything else, because WordPress is really the low end of the bar, right? If someone can get WordPress for free, and they can get a WordPress account in 15 seconds out of WordPress.com, so if WordPress does this thing, I can't really use it to sell a CMS. We used to always harp on versioning. Versioning was great for us to sell commercial content management systems. When people talk about going with an open source system like WordPress, well, we would say, well, they don't have versioning, that's a huge risk. And we would FUD this up and we would make this big case for it. And they'd be nodding their heads and like, yeah, right, I didn't think about that. WordPress doesn't have versioning, that's a problem. And then one day WordPress did have versioning. And that became a really big issue for us. And WordPress even now has versioning and it has like track changes and everything. And so what do we do now? The fact is the bar at the bottom end, the management bar, has now gone up a rung. They've taken away a tool in the CMS salesman's toolbox that he can use to sell a commercial system. And what are they going to take away next? And so the fact is that the open source CMS systems on the management side are gradually taking rungs off the bottom end of the ladder. They are gradually pulling slides out of the deck of the salesman. He can't have a slide on versioning anymore because everybody does versioning, so now it's a commodity. I did some research about car sales. Do you know in the last year, 94% of new cars have power windows? It's actually tough to find a car now that does not have power windows. It's kind of hard. 94% of cars have power locks. Almost 95% of cars have automatic transmissions. And 99% of cars have air conditioning. Now, I don't know how old you people are, but my first car had none of these things. None of these things. It was a 1973 Ford Pinto, and it had absolutely none of those things. I still drive a car today that has a manual transmission. And so these used to be things that car salesmen would use to sell cars. They would like sit in this car and it has power locks and it has power windows and it has automatic transmission and air conditioning. Isn't this great? This is better than your car. Well, unfortunately, when people come into your lot now, they probably have a car that has all these things. And so now what are you going to sell? The fact is that these things now hold very little relative value, because the value of something only has value in comparison to the situation the person's in now. And if they have all four of these things, then I can't use these things to sell them things. And this is where we are in the content management world, is the open source content management systems have eaten up the bottom end of this market, and they have commoditized so many different things. I think the day is coming. We used to be able to go into sales situations and sell things on the left side of the publish button. You used to be able to go in and say, this management stuff is so great. Look, you can go to a web page, and you can log into this web page, and you can make new web pages from this web page. And that just blew their minds. You really can't do that anymore. I think a day is coming, and that day may be here now, where as a commercial content management salesman, you cannot sell things on the left side of the publish button anymore. And there's no incentive to push the envelope on the management side. Look at this picture. Forrest isn't running anymore, and he's not running because the people behind him aren't running. He doesn't have to run. He's out in front of them, and that's where we are on the management side. There's no incentive because customers really aren't asking for functionality there that we're not offering. So we have no incentive to pour a lot of R&D development into there. What I did last year to research a related presentation is I called 7 CTOs of commercial content management systems. I called them up. These are guys I know from the industry, and I made this statement. And this statement reads that content management is largely a solved problem. Almost all of the advances in the field are happening in the delivery and marketing space. And this is a purposely inflammatory statement. I made it as strongly worded as I could. And I'm going to tell you their answers. And they're anonymous, because some of them were very, very provocative. And these answers are going to be represented by the symbol of American capitalism, the monopoly guy. here were some of the statements, and these are very, very interesting. The majority of our development effort is focused outside our core management product. So this company had multiple different products along management and marketing, and they're basically saying, we are concentrating on everything but management. Development on a repository. Now, a repository is the thing that kind of stores the content. That would be the most foundational aspect of a management system. It's strictly to support our delivery services. So if the guys doing the delivery want us to make a change there to support that, we'll make that change. Otherwise, we're not doing anything there. Content management was commoditized as soon as open source solutions reached sufficient competency at a no-cost price point. For a lot of problems, remember I said about 95% of projects, for a lot of problems, open source systems are sufficiently competent. So you can't really compete anymore because management has really been commoditized. The focus on the management side now is on strictly reducing implementation costs. So all they care about is making it cheaper to build websites. The money shot of a CMS demo is no longer, here's how you edit a page of content. We used to do that all the time. The first thing we would do in a demo is, hey, here's how you edit a piece of content. Well, you can't really, if that is the biggest part of your demo, if that is your big moment, you are in huge trouble. How many different ways can you demo core content management? And then this last one, we build our product 100% for marketers. The idea of a content editor is an antiquated notion. This company doesn't even care about your content editor. The content editor for them is a means to an end. All they care about is after that content is published, after it's been thrown over the wall, what can we do with it for the content marketer? I believe we are entering what I'm calling the post-management era of CMS. The era where management sells anything is really, really past us. And these are the things that we're seeing in the commercial content management market. These are the features that are selling content management systems. This is an example out of Episerver. Episerver is a commercial .NET system. And this is an A/B test. And what you see is that this editor has created two versions of the content. They have the original at the top there and two versions. And they're seeing which one converts better. And here's an example of what Twitter does with this. Not with this particular CMS, but with A/B testing in general, is they have these two widgets, and they're exactly the same except for the words on the button. And what they're doing is they're checking to see which one converts better. And so this system, for like 10% of users, will show them a randomized version of variation 1 or 2, and whichever one converts better. At the end of the test, you can configure it just to automatically publish that version. It's like, just test this stuff, and whichever one works better, let's publish that version. So this is A/B testing. This is integrated analytics. This is from Elcom. This is another .NET system out of Australia. As a developer, I think this is silly because Google Analytics is better than any analytics package that could ever be built into a CMS, but this sells like crazy. You bring this up in a demo and you say, look, you publish this content, and then you can go to this tab and you can see all these statistics. They love this. This is at a Bridgeline, another commercial .NET system. This is campaign management. They have all of their inbound marketing campaigns listed here, and it's showing their status and how many visits and how many people are bouncing off the landing page. So this is integrated campaign management right into the CMS. This is from Episerver. This is their social integration. It's called Social Reach. It's an interesting tool that right from after you create a page of content, you can put promos for that content into different social networks right from the tool. And what it will tell you is their analytics engine will tell you how well they're converting. You can see how well it's getting retweeted or favorited or liked or whatever that particular platform offers. So you can go to your page and you can immediately look at the analytics and you can see how it's performing on social media. This is another great one. This is out of Episerver too. What we've done here, if you look on the left there, we've created a bucket called job seekers. This is a visitor bucket. And we define that as if they come in from a search engine with the word job in the query, or if they come in from monster.com, which is a job posting board, we're going to kind of tag them for the length of their session as what we're calling a job seeker. And what we can do is we can modify the content there down to the sentence level. So what we can do in this case, if you look on the right here, right within our WYSIWYG editor, we have a paragraph at the bottom, a very generic paragraph. Alloy is a piece of software, so why use Alloy? But if they're a job seeker, if we think they're a visitor coming to look for a job, we can actually swap that paragraph out. This is from Kentico. They have built a full marketing automation suite into their system now. So you're publishing content and it's waiting, and then it's sending an email about that content, and it's seeing how anybody clicks on that. And if they do click, it's waiting again, and then it might send them another email. And this is another huge marketing suite right in the CMS. Now, what's important about all these different things I showed you is that these are things happen after publish. These don't make any sense before publish. These are not management things. These are all delivery and marketing things. None of this takes place before the publish button. And this is where all the money is being spent in the commercial CMS world right now. So all of this money is being spent really to the right of the publish button. And so we're really to the point where I think CMS is no longer a content management system. It's really a content marketing system. The management side, people really don't care anymore. I was at a user group last year, and we had a customer in from a very, very well-known company, and they were showing what they were doing with content marketing. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you use for content manage? How do you manage all this content? And he said, well, we use Adobe Omniture. Well, if you know about Adobe Omniture, it's not a content management system. It's a marketing automation suite. And I said, no, your content management system. He didn't even know. He had no idea. All he worked in all day long was Adobe Omniture. I don't even think the guy knew what a content management system was. So all these people care about is marketing results and ROI. They don't care about where the content's coming from or how it's getting managed. And why is this? I think what we're finding is that businesses don't manage content for the sake of managing content. And this seems like a very obvious phrase, but it's true. If I write a press release, I'm not writing a press release for my own health. I'm not writing a press release to test my writers or to test my content management system. I am writing a press release to get some kind of ROI out of it. And the content is not the thing. And on the management side, we tend to think the content is the thing, that we worship this piece of content, and how do we manage that piece of content? And that's good and it's necessary, but the content really only exists to achieve an outcome for the business. And we tend to respect the content more than we respect the outcome. And who cares if that press release did anything for us, as long as it was managed well and had good workflow and versioning and permissions. We don't really care if it actually accomplished anything for the organization. My dad used to say this phrase all the time, and it's a very, very intelligent phrase. You don't buy a drill, you buy a hole. If I go buy a drill, I'm not buying a drill because I want to drill. I don't want to look at it. I'm buying a drill because I want a hole in a piece of wood. And that's really how a CMS is. You don't buy a CMS, you buy an outcome. Now, as developers tend to get focused on the CMS itself. The CMS is a tool to achieve an outcome, to achieve an end. If I'm a CMO or a CEO, I don't care about the CMS. I only care about the outcome that it's enabling. And this kind of sucks for me. And the reason why this sucks for me is because I'm a developer. I'm an engineer, and I hate this. The fact is, I like data. I like data a lot. Is anybody in here old enough to remember War Games, the movie War Games? Anybody? Oh, thank God. Geez, I'm 42. I thought nobody's going to remember War Games. This was the computer in War Games, the Whopper. I loved the Whopper. And for me, growing up, this was the archetype of kind of big data. This is what supercomputers did, man. They were the Whopper. Does anybody remember Cray? Cray computers? Cray were awesome. These were big, huge computers that did massive parallel processing. And they had this unique thing. They all had a bench built into them. Now, I maintain that bench was there because once you saw a Cray computer, you're going to be so overwhelmed with how awesome it was, you were going to need to sit down. So they gave you a bench. They said, here, you're going to be lightheaded because this is so great. Here's a bench. So this is management. This is data. This is what I love. What do we think about when we think about marketing? As an engineer thinking about marketing, is anybody old enough to remember WKRP in Cincinnati? Anybody? Who's this guy? Herb Tarlick. This is the classic salesman. He's the slimy salesman that always hitting on Lonnie Anderson's character. And he wears this plaid sport coat. And he's like the worst guy in the world. And so I started thinking, what were some other movie salesmen that we could vilify? Remember Bill Paxton's character from True Lies? He was trying to sleep with Schwarzenegger's life. Slimy used car salesman. And speaking of used car salesman, how about William H. Macy from Fargo? Right? So this is what we think about it. When I'm an engineer, I'm not thinking about data anymore. And data is what I love. I'm thinking about marketing, and I hate marketing. And so this is really hard for developers to handle. This is a great quote. I was talking, last year we went out to talk to a university system. They were heavy Drupal users, and they wanted to talk about a commercial .NET system. And I asked them, I said, you're heavy into Drupal. You have a bunch of PHP developers around here. Why in the world do you want to consider it a .NET system? And his quote was great. He wanted to do an A/B test, and he went to his Drupal developers, and he said, I'd really like to do an A/B test. And this was, the developers looked at me like I was crazy, like I couldn't understand why I wanted to betray their open source ideals with something as trivial as marketing. Because these are a bunch of open source developers that love data, they love management, they don't want to deal with marketing. And they actually looked at it as some kind of betrayal that someone in their organization actually wanted to get an outcome out of their data. And whose fault is this? And this is the fun part. And this is the super, super fun slide because I get to blame Karen. So this is Karen McCrane. She'll be speaking later, and I'm going to blame her. I'm going to blame her, and I'm going to blame Christina Halverson, and I'm going to blame Rachel Levinger, and I'm going to blame all the content strategists. My bold, unverifiable claim number 3, content strategists ruined content management for developers because they forced us to think about outcomes. We had to stop thinking about data, and we had to start thinking about outcomes, and we didn't want to do this. And they ruined it for us. So how does this change how we sell? So now we've established that the content management industry is very, very developer-centric. We've established that management is not going to sell in the future, and it's really going to be based on marketing. How does this change how we sell? I think this is the last of my bold, unverifiable claims, and I've really been leading this up to the entire deal, is that increasingly management functionality won't close deals. You won't be able to go in and close on the left side of the publish button anymore. You'll have to jump the fence and close on the right side. And what's important to understand is we have to look at the audiences for a content management system. I maintain there are 3 major audiences for content management in terms of people in an organization who interact with a content management system. And these are the 3 different audiences that you're going to have to sell to in some respect when you go in and sell a content management system. There are developers. These are the people who build and configure the system. There are users. These are editors, people who edit the content and people who market the content. And then there are stakeholders. And stakeholders would be the CEO, the CMO, the shareholders, the guys who are writing the check or the women who are writing the check, the people who are paying the money for the CMS. These are the 3 audiences you are going to have to sell to. And we have to ask ourselves, what do developers want? So we're going to go through these audiences. We're going to determine what they want and what is the thing that's going to sell for that. Developers want ease of development. They want technical elegance. Developers are impressed by something that is technically elegant. And they want the avoidance of workaround. That's what they want. That's how to sell to these guys. Well, if your CMS has that, great, you'll be able to sell them. But the fact is, a lot of different CMSs have this. What do content editors want? Oh, it's my Lego figurine. Lego had a figurine for programmer. I think that's absolutely adorable. He's got a little C prompt on his mug. That's great. So this is the Lego figurine. So Lego didn't have a figurine for content editor. So what I did is that's the figurine for artist and librarian. And I'm thinking that if these 2 had little Lego sex, they would give birth to a content editor. That's my theory. They want ease of usage. They want lack of workarounds. They don't like having to work around problems. And they really want the ability to create quality work. They want a CMS that's going to get out of their way. So if you have these things, great. We're going to be able to sell to them. But a lot of CMSs have these things. So let's talk about the stakeholder. Let's talk about the person that's writing the check, the person that's going to pay you money for your system. What do they want? Oh, yeah, okay, this is great. Hold on. Now back up here. So they did have a Lego figurine for Businessman, which is great. But here's the thing. They also had a Lego figurine for Darth Vader. So I took that, but here's the story, and this is unrelated to anything, but the Darth Vader they had a white lightsaber. And I was like, how can this possibly be? Everybody knows that Darth Vader has a red lightsaber. Please start nodding so I'm not the only one that noticed this. So I took this to my artist, and I said, Sam, can you make that lightsaber red? And so he did, and if you look, I have to call him out here. I don't know how well you can see it there, but down Vader's right side, he even got the red reflection. This reflection. So yeah. This is why we can't have nice things, because we keep doing things like this. So what do stakeholders want? The CMO, the CEO, the person who's writing the check, what do they want? They want outcomes. They want conversions. More than anything, they want ROI. They want return on investment. They are putting X dollars into this system. They want some multiple of X out of it. Now we're talking about what they want. What's important is what they don't want. What do stakeholders not want? They don't want a CMS. I'm not going to say they don't want a CMS, but they sure as hell don't care about a CMS. They are buying a drill not to buy a drill. They are buying a drill because they want a hole in a piece of wood. They don't want a CMS, they want an outcome. If a CMS is the way we're going to get that, fantastic. But you know what? If you went to them and you said, I'm going to manage content using carrier pigeons and a donkey, but I'm going to get you ROI, fantastic. They don't care. They are not impressed with the CMS. They are only impressed with the outcome. I've come up with a theory about this that I call distance to outcome. And the distance to outcome is the distance between the existence of a feature and the outcome that it enables. And this is audience specific. So they always sell in sales. The first rule of sales is you don't sell features, you sell benefits, you sell outcomes. And so what we have to talk about is the distance for every audience from some feature to the outcome that it enables. So if we look at the feature benefits, so if we have a feature in our CMS, what are the different benefits then that can provide? And I maintain there's some obvious ones. It can reduce costs. So I have some kind of feature of my CMS that's going to reduce the cost to build a website with that CMS. It's going to increase outcome. I have some feature of my CMS that's going to cause that to perform better, get us better ROI on that CMS. And there are a couple smaller ones, I put them in parentheses, reduce risk or increase morale, because the CMS can have a huge impact on morale. But they're very small. I mean, fundamentally, the feature benefits we're looking for is to reduce costs and increase outcomes. So let's think about a feature. And I'm going to purposely use a very developer-centric feature. Let's say you're working with a CMS and it has an API that you really don't like. And so you make some API change, a new API to work better with that CMS. And as a developer, you're super impressed with that. So that's this feature that you've built. You've changed your API to make it easier to work with. Let's talk about the distance to benefit for our three audiences. Let's talk about developers. That feature exists. How short is the leap for them to get benefit? It's very, very short. They were struggling before. They have your new API. They can work so much better. So their distance to benefit is very, very short. Let's talk about the content editor or the content marketer. What's their distance to benefit? It's longer. I maintain it's probably still there because most editors and marketers are fairly dependent on their developers to make changes, so there is still a benefit for them, but the distance is longer. Maybe 3 or 4 times a year, this may come into play and make their life better. So using this as a feature to sell a CMS to them, it's a little more of a leap because it's a longer distance. Let's talk about our stakeholder. How long is the distance to outcome for them? It's huge to the point of maybe not even being present. Your CEO does not care about your new API. His question is going to be, how is this going to make the organization more money? How is this going to increase conversions for the organization? And so you need to think about distance to benefit. And if you're talking about the CMO or the CEO of a company and you're talking about how awesome your API is, he's not going to be impressed because his distance to benefit is so great. The fact is that management features tend to reduce costs while marketing features tend to increase revenue. And this is a very, very important point. If I have some great management feature, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the cost of an implementation. And that's a valid point. We're going to make implementations cheaper. But if I have a marketing feature, what I'm going to say is after your site's up and running, I am going to generate more conversions, generate more outcomes for you with this piece of software, with this feature. And here's the super critical part of this. Revenue has more upside than cost has downside. And think about this. Let's take a hypothetical CMS implementation. And let's say it costs $50,000. And that's probably valid for a number of different projects. So we have a $50,000 CMS implementation. If we come up with some feature of a CMS that reduces our implementation cost by 25%, and that's huge. I mean, if you could come up with a feature that would reduce implementation cost by 25%, that's great. So if we have a $50,000 project, we take 25% off it, that's $12,500 that feature has saved us. $12,500, not an insignificant number. But what if we came up with a feature that could increase return by $1,000 a month? Well, that's $12,000 a year. And if you give that you put a website in and it lasts 3 or 4 years, we can almost make the entire cost of that implementation back. Because if we're reducing the cost of the implementation, the lower level we can reduce cost is 0. We can't reduce it any further than 0. Upside has no limit. I mean, if we came up with a feature that really was so good that it increased conversions by $10,000 a month, by $20,000 a month, revenue has so much more upside than cost has downside. So if you're selling on reducing costs, you're going to run into the lower limit where you just can't reduce costs anymore. And then you have to start selling on upside. So what do we need to do? When we're selling content management systems, I've identified 4 things that I think we need to do to sell CMS better and position CMS better in the market. Number 1, we need to start selling backwards. I think that a lot of content management systems are still sold chronologically. The fact is we say, well, look how you can model content. This is how you can create your content types and your properties and things like that. And then you can create content, and then you can publish content, and then you can edit content, and then you can manage content. And so now this is all in chronological order, right? The chronological order that would work with content. And then maybe at the end, let's say, oh yeah, and also you can market content like this. We need to start selling up this list. We need to start with the marketing of the content. We need to just assume that we're managing content just fine and really start with marketing the content and work backwards up that list. Number two, we have to assume management. The fact is every competitor in every deal is going to do his management as good as you do it. You need to accept this fact. You need to own this fact. You need to go into a deal, go into a situation where you're framing a CMS for somebody, and you need to just assume that every single CMS that's being pitched is going to do management as well as you do. If you end up doing management better than another one, fantastic. That's a bonus. But just assume that that playing field is completely level. Number three, we need to sell CXM integration and XP. CXM, I don't know how many people are familiar with that, customer experience management, all those features I was showing before, all these features that happen on the other side of the publish button. We need to sell this as an expertise. We really need to go in and start selling this instead of really selling content management. The fact is that smart organizations are just going to start buying CXM first. They're going to go buy a marketing automation suite, and then they're going to look for a CMS to back it up. It used to be so you would have movable type, and you'd be like, wow, my CMS is great. Now I'm going to go buy a marketing automation suite. I'm going to buy a HubSpot or a Marketo or something like that. I think this is going to switch. And you're going to have somebody that has Marketo, and they're like, well, I need a CMS to back this up with. And so they're going to need to find a CMS for that. And if you're out selling a CMS now, maybe you should stop. Maybe you should go sell Marketo instead. And then when the customer's like, well, I love this. This is fantastic. What CMS am I going to use to back this up? Then sell them the CMS to back it up. But I think this paradigm is going to switch, and we're going to go from CXM backwards to CMS now. And number four, we need to start developing for a post-publish world. So for all the developers in the room that actually have input into the direction of their products, we need to stop developing features for other developers. We need to start developing for a post-build, post-publish experience. Developers have enough features, please. And if a developer has an issue they really need to scratch, they can probably do it themselves. We need to start asking ourselves, what can we do with our CMS to enable things on the other side of the publish button, to enable people to do better things with content after they've published it. And I'll finish with one statement that I absolutely believe in. There is no CMO in the world that is going to pay 6 figures for better versioning. They're not going to say, wow, I need to version my content better. Here's $100,000. That's not going to happen. We need to start developing and extending our systems for a post-publish world. That's all I had. Thank you very much.